Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
This is Millie Weaver, and you're watching the Infowars Nightly News. Well, today we have a very special guest today appearing with us via phone, Louis Buff Parry, who is a former intelligence advisor, a recognized and established codebreaker, and an occasional university instructor. Well, I wanted to get his take on the Tucker Carlson interview with a man named Bryan Dean Wright, who is a former CIA officer and it has come out saying that the intelligence agency, or shadow parts of the intelligence agency, is hiding information from President Trump. So let's go ahead and look at a clip from this video really quick before we go in and ask Buff his take on it.
There are these reports that are troubling that various agencies are withholding intel from the White House. Do you think those are true?
I do. I think some things are being leaked to discredit the president.
Yes.
And then the second piece is I think some folks are holding information back. And that's deeply troubling. I think it should be for all of us.
But it's illegal, too, isn't it?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, we start to get into grounds of treason.
All right. Well, Buff, from your expertise and experience as a former intelligence advisor, what's your take on this? I mean, what do you think? Do you think that this is a coup attempt on President Donald Trump? And what can he do to stop this coup?
Well, I think with Tucker Carlson, to begin, I noted a very different series of expressions on his face and tone in his voice. This man in the interview, Tucker, was very disturbed by, I think, the implications of what it means when a former CIA officer comes forward saying that there's a split in the intelligence community and that the community has elements that are withholding what could very well be vital intelligence information from the President of the United States. Whatever anyone thinks of the new President of America, a president has to make quick decisions, and to have this, especially in the time we're living, to have this happen is really quite dangerous. And if the intelligence community is split, that I think is the first place to start, healing and working on some repair, because we're headed for some really even rougher waters than we've been through over the last 100 years. And if the intelligence community is not on one page, and you've got people withholding information that could be so vital that it could allow for the intervention of a plot of a terrorist act.
Exactly. So basically, because the intelligence community is so busy infighting amongst each other, that you're basically saying that could actually be a major national security threat, because there could be terrorist attacks and other things that they're not necessarily seeing because they're too busy infighting and too busy trying to plot against President Trump. So what would you advise President Trump to do? What's the best course of action when you have a rogue group in the CIA and other intelligence communities that's literally trying to run a coup?
Well, if he hasn't already, I think he should be in touch with Bryan Dean Wright and hear Mr. Wright out on what Bryan Dean Wright has stated to Tucker Carlson and what the background to all of that is. Surely there are officers, agents, and officials in intelligence who are briefing the president, but this man, Bryan Dean Wright, is a member of the Democratic Party, and for him to come out, and if I understand this right, he wasn't a supporter of Donald Trump whatsoever, but for him to come out now, I think, okay, let's look at it this way: the timeliness is either very convenient or or something major has happened in addition to the optics of division within the community, and we may not really know what that is, and may never know what that is, but in the meantime, it would serve the world well, I think, if there is stability, in all three branches of government in America, dependability and predictability, because otherwise, the shambles that would result are nightmarish. And I don't personally, I'm really hoping that President Trump doesn't need to get into executive orders or presidential proclamations, but it looks like it's moving in that direction, and that's his one set of his solutions. I honestly don't even know if you can legally have an executive order combined with a presidential proclamation. But if you can, even if you can't, he could do one or the other.
So basically what you're saying is that, with an executive order or a presidential proclamation, he could make some kind of executive order under the guise of that there's rogue groups in these intelligence agencies and that they're neglecting their job as far as keeping the nation secure because they're too busy infighting, and not to mention the fact that they're actually withholding information from the president, which could lead to some type of a national disaster. So what exactly would President Trump do in that scenario, and how do you think that would roll out?
Well, an executive order can be overturned if the order lacks support by statute or the Constitution. If it's seen clearly that it is supported by the Constitution, then whatever the president would initiate, he can follow through with. But if it is seen as not supported by the Constitution or by statute, but statute would require, a whole lot more time than I think is probably available right now. So, it would be best to have as many constitutional experts as he can muster to quickly provide some opinions and interpretations on how it is that the Constitution could support his executive order. An executive order can decide how to and what degree of legislation will be enforced, especially dealing with emergencies.
Well, I know you were talking a little bit on, if President Trump were to do an executive order, that he would have to act fast, and that there might be some way where he could actually do an executive order, act fast to make the actions necessary to remove these rogue elements in the CIA in time before they could actually go in and try to make a statute or overrule it, basically.
Yeah, it's my understanding that there is a period. He can assert the executive order or initiate the executive order, and once applied, if it turns out to appear not to have support from the Constitution, because it probably wouldn't have it by statute, because that would take a whole lot more time. I'm not an expert in the tripartite kind of complex of law here that would protect him to follow through with an executive order up to the point when it's deemed that it is not constitutionally supported.
Well, I want to thank Buff Parry for joining us here over the phone. It was a very enlightening conversation, and I definitely want to hear more about his Code 19 and more about, his takes from an inside point of view as a former intelligence advisor. So thank you so much, Louis Buff Parry, for joining us here. And this is Millie Weaver signing off for the Infowars Nightly News.
The globalists have controlled the mainstream media for a long time, but now they're expanding, making the weaponization even more vicious and deceptive. All the major networks are state-run.
We are partnering this year with the NFL.
The NFL has become a political weapon against the Second Amendment and pushes Obamacare. MSNBC tells us that our children belong to the state.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
The brainwashing media machine has been turned up on high, and it's time for humanity to double down on the true people's media and strike back against the tyrants that are destroying our civilization with their lies and fraud. We are the resistance. You are the resistance. You are the info war. It is more important than ever to realize that we are not the alternative media. We are the true media. The establishment dinosaur press is dying.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war.
Join us at InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Members can share their memberships with up to 11 people. By subscribing, you will literally be buying war bonds in the info war to expand our operation in the face of the tyrants. Join us at PrisonPlanet.tv.